The opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the participants and do not reflect the opinions or beliefs of Marshall University, Marshall University Libraries, the Department of English, the College of Liberal Arts, Marshall University Film Studies, or HerdCon. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of HerdCon's Book Chats. We're continuing our theme this season of looking at short novels. So things that if you're kind of wanting to get back into reading or you feel intimidated about getting back into reading, we wanted to kind of pick books that were readable, had a variety of subject matter, and would kind of something you could read even if you were a slower reader like myself. You could still read a book in a couple of days. Something that, again, the selection will have, some will be light and fluffy, some will be very heavy, but they're very dense. And this one today that we're going to be looking at, and of course I'm here with Meghan Sexton-Harness, my co-host, is the Kamogawa Food Detectives by Hisashi Kashiwai, I believe. I can do the intro to that, and then if you want to do the intro to the translator, because we're looking at the translation. This was a book that came out in about 2013, and then the translation was very recent, 2023, I think 2023 was the first edition in the American translation. This was a popular, best-selling book in Japan. So, Hisashi Kashiwai was born in 1952 and raised in Kyoto. He graduated from Osaka Dental University. After graduating, he returned to Kyoto and worked as a dentist. He has written extensively about his native city and has collaborated in TV programs and magazines.
And the Kamogawa Food Detectives was translated from Japanese to English by Jesse Kirkwood, who is a literary translator working from Japanese to English. He was the recipient of the 2020 Harville Secker Young Translators Prize. His translations include The Kamogawa Food Detectives by Hisashi Kashiwai, Tokyo Express by, and I apologize if I pronounced this incorrectly, Saicho Matsumoto, and A Perfect Day to Be Alone by Nane Aoyama?
Yeah. So again, we apologize for any mispronunciations. Please, if anyone watches this and listens, please feel free to correct us, and we will happy to issue corrections about pronunciations. But so this is how would you describe this book?
In my notes, I think I've described it. It reminded me a lot, if you've ever heard this or read the article "Trash Food" by Chris Offutt. Mm-hmm. Because they take a lot of foods, especially the final story, that a lot of people would consider like lowbrow or like casual foods, and they talk about like how they're much more than that, both culturally and complex flavors, just because they're considered a lower class of food, I guess. Doesn't mean that there's not that connection.
Something that poor people would eat.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that thinking about it, I think it's interesting how oftentimes food, I think about the way like food that gets like, this is the food of poor people. I think about like during the Depression, people would boil poke salad because it was poisonous until they could finally eat it as a green, or any sort of offal. That these are the foods that are left to the poor and the working class. At some point, you got your ham hocks, your pork belly, all of these things, and at some point, the hipsters and the more well-to-do get into the food, and then they jack the price up because they're so. And it becomes this kind of delicacy or foodie kind of thing, even though this may be something that generations of people have been like, well, this is what we had to eat at the time.
But I also, without so much of the humor, came to mind of House MD with Greg Laurie, just because you have the wildest or the least amount of detail to help you find and recreate this dish perfectly.
Yeah.
And yet he always does. Mm-hmm. So it kind of put me in mind of that, where like he can't fail, he can't be wrong, but without the humor and dark sarcasm of House.
I mean, it's very much. I mean, it is a Sherlock Holmes kind of story, pretty much. I mean, it's this guy that uses deduction and reasoning and seems to be this like very very worldly person who knows a lot of different stuff or can figure a lot of stuff out. And I think some of the appeal of the book is watching, having him explain things of like, how did I make this wonderful dish that is just for this one particular person?
I will say for me, the food was a high point in the book. My favorite food has always been Japanese food. And then a few years ago, I got to be friends with an international student from Japan, and he would regularly cook for me. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is definitely my favorite kind of food. Mm-hmm. So just hearing those descriptions and just wondering, like, my one complaint about it was I wish there were included recipes. I think that would be so much fun to read this book, like maybe as a club and each bring.
Yeah. I think it was, I also strangely kind of think, I understand that. I also kind of strangely think that it's like, this is such a personal, ultimately kind of private thing. This is like, they're making these meals. So just to give a little, I should have went with the novel summary. So basically, novel summary, a retired police officer and his daughter operate a detective agency and restaurant that solves culinary mysteries for clients trying to recover lost meals and oftentimes the memories behind them. So it's this restaurant, but it's like, it looks like it's not a restaurant, or it looks like it's closed, but it's actually an operation. So they're not, they don't have like, they're not exclusive, but they're self-selecting as far as, if you're, it's like they're in Soldier of Fortune magazine and they have this ad like, we find meals for you or something. We find food for you. It's like, interesting. Somebody like has to like find the puzzle pieces and put things together where this restaurant is, and they meet the father, they meet the daughter, and then they give them this vague information that's locked, some far distant fuzzy memories, and then they make this amazing meal that brings everything back for them. So
I will also specify that the ad they put out has no contact information. You just have to kind of be your own little detective.
Yeah. And I think there's a couple of stories, people that I think have a little more economic or in better economic situations are able to contact the editor to try to get stuff out of the editor, where the editor will like, I'll give you a hint if you can figure it out. So I always wonder if just somebody just like happened by it one day and like, I'll try this. I'll try this restaurant, and then they get pulled into it. But everybody seems to be there very intentionally going to it. And I think about some place like Kyoto. It was a really funny part in it. It talks about, well, there are lots of forest around Kyoto, and there are lots of shrines around Kyoto. And it is a little bit like it's a shrine for kind of lost souls or people who are missing parts of their memory or wanting to fill in the gaps. And that this is they're kind of like pilgrims who happen upon this place.
It's definitely a very feel-good novel. If you're looking for like some big climax or plot, you're not going to find it here. It's just very calm and very cozy. I'm definitely a cozy kind of person, so it was just a nice, delightful read.
Yeah, I kind of like, what would I like? And I don't even like. I don't think there's you can rate it. I don't think there's a point, but it feels like as a work of literature, it is a palate cleanser. Like whatever you're doing, whatever you're reading, however grim, however spicy, whatever, however, murder podcast it is, it just kind of, it kind of is a way to kind of read something that kind of cleanses the palate, because you have these, it's kind of it's a short story, selection of short stories. And I don't know how much they build on each other to be something like a short story cycle or how connected they are really. But it is this kind of like, in about 35 pages, you get someone, having a meal and having parts of their memory and parts of their past restored to them, and however they kind of grapple with that. So it is this kind of, it is a satisfying package, so to speak.
I also really liked that it is so much about the past, but also several of them are about preparing these people for the future. Mm-hmm. One of the stories, and it was, I think, a morally gray area. The man comes to have the food made for him, and they tell him, they're like, no, this is exactly the way you had it before. And then after he leaves, he turns out that they were putting a little bit of more extra salt or umami flavor to help him adjust to wherever he's moving to.
Yeah.
And I was like, so, I mean, you are kind of gaslighting him, but is it is it the greater good? Will this actually help him more than it hurt him?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like, it's not like he's questioning his existence and his sanity,
True.
and they're not, usually when someone gaslights, they're like, it is a series of prolonged gaslighting that happens. But it seems a little, it's therapeutic behavioral modification. It does get into, I think the gray area of things, but yeah, it's kind of like that particular meal, and it's these noodles that he wants to get. It's the udon noodles. It's a particular kind. Just all of the specifics about, like, it has to be a certain kind of stock and made a certain way, and the mushrooms have to be from, all of this, like, it's one thing, like, I'm just trying to make a meal as best I can with the best ingredients. I'm trying to recreate someone's meal that they had at a given date. And it's helping him process. Like, he can let go of his first wife, loves her very much, and then he can live with he's gonna have a relationship with this newer woman who's taking care of her dad, which that's enough stress as it is. So it's kind of like, we need to, like, transition. It's kind of like when you have a cat or a plant or anything. You kind of like put them in one little place, let them get used to the place, and then I think it has a transitional quality to it. So
So there's 6 stories, and they're structured in part 1 and part 2. Part 1, you get to hear about the story, what led them to this food.
Everybody's always on the street, and it's busy, or it's cold, or it's rainy. It's something like they're rushed, and then they're going to go to the restaurant. They find the restaurant. So.
And then they come back about 2 weeks later, I think is their general time frame, and you get part 2 of them actually eating the food, and then the dad explaining how he found this. And like I said, it's broken up into 6 stories. Which of the stories did you find to be the most?
Which were the ones that I found to be? I think, one thing I wanted to just overall, I thought this was a very interesting kind of choice of narrative, because this is all basically summary. We don't. Everything takes place in this restaurant. It is like, it could be a play. I don't know if this would be an exciting play or not, unless they had the food smells. Then I would say that would make it worth it.
Dinner theater.
Yeah, and then you get to eat some of the meal, whatever they've got left afterwards. I like that. But it is like something that goes against, like, everything you would ever be taught in a creative writing class. And I've said this a lot in podcasts, but, like, highlight write the islands, write the big moments, write the scenes, and not the summary. And this is so, literally, it's almost, it's a little bit like kind of set like kind of Greek theater. I know I said that the last podcast, but it's a lot of, like, everyone's describing things. Something happens off stage, and then the father, the detective, comes on. Nare, who I believe in Japanese it's kind of, the rough translation is flow. So he seems to be this character that flows and is adaptable. He doesn't seem to have his items he's really good at, but he kind of adapts himself to the case. And we just get him. Everything is in this restaurant, in this little office, and it's kind of remarkable that it manages to be pretty darn compelling, and when it has so much against it. But then again, it's balanced by the emotional stories, which can lean a little sentimental, and then just the straight up food porn that we have here, just the descriptions and the details about it.
Yes. Don't read this book if you're hungry.
Yeah, no, I was like, hey, my wife was like, hey, do you want to go to one of the East Flavor? Do you want to go to East Flavor? It's like, yes, this sounds great. I was reading this, like, sounds awesome. It's one of our local Asian restaurants. I'm all about that. Now, I kind of like, I mean, which one is one that I was really interested? I think maybe, and this is like the ones that you're interested in because of the personal story, the ones you're interested because of the food. And I think it's the Neapolitan spaghetti that maybe interests me the most, although I think the stakes in that one seem a little smaller than some of the other ones. I was just kind of fascinated with what counted for a kind of Italian spaghetti in Japan, with like an egg in it. This sounds delicious, but it like has a lot of ketchup in it and stuff, and has Frankenfurt. Like, it seems like there's like three sausages of some sort that are there, and I'm like, And I'm pretty sure, like, if anyone from Italy, like the stuff where they make a lot of pastas, they would be like horrified at what Americans do. Americans, okay, this is Italian food and spaghetti and things like that. But yeah, I was just like really fascinated by that dish, and it just seems strange. But how like any like other ethnic cuisines are kind of adapted for a particular country and a particular culture.
Sure. I think for me, less about the food, surprisingly. The beef stew was probably my favorite food to hear about. I'm just a soup kind of person. But the emotional story was probably the tonkatsu of the woman whose ex-husband is dying. And we get this story of like what led them to divorce and just how much I've never been divorced, thank goodness. But just the amount of love and loyalty she still has to him. And I was so confused as to why, like, they're exes. We know they're divorced, but I never got why they were divorced because it seems like they're still very much in love. Like, I didn't know if it was an honor thing because he does talk about, like, not having money and being poor. So I was very confused, but touched at the same time by how much love and loyalty they still had.
Yeah, and it seemed it was a fugu. He ran a fugu restaurant, which is pufferfish. Which, if anybody, there's an episode of The Simpsons a long time ago where Homer Simpson eats some pufferfish and he thinks he's got poisoned and he's got a day left to live or something like that. But anyway, it is like, I've always heard it's like you need to have the equivalent of an MA in America to be able to handle this kind of fish properly, to make sure, because it's got all these little spines and stuff, and you gotta make sure none of the spines tips hit into the meat. So it's all this like very careful and difficult processing. And yeah, the man, the ex-husband, had nothing to do with the death, and even his like sous chef had nothing to do with the death. It's just, well, this like brother-in-law comes in or something and demands have the fugu made, and he's like, I refuse to make you this. And it's something that like just his hubris leads to his death, but also like the responsibility that the ex-husband feels about the death of somebody. And it is kind of like, that's a real food poison. These are real like reputation killing things in the restaurant business. I think particularly in a place like Japan, where they're very much tied up in kind of honor and image and respect. Having like, you maintain a restaurant, and if it fails, there's shame. You have to go somewhere else. But yeah, I think it was, yeah, it does like tragic circumstances break people up, but it doesn't mean that they don't have. Now, some people I know, like people in relationships, are like, I've forgotten that person, and I'm glad I didn't have gone on with my life. And some people are like, oh, they were good, I hope they're doing well. And then there's some that's always like, that's the one that got away kind of thing going on. And that one, yeah, I think that's probably one of the more touching ones in it, I think.
I'm also just a big romantic, so
yeah. And there's just the loving way he like has it's these tonkatsu is like kind of this breaded fried pork, which sounds delicious. But he's like it's a 3 millimeter cut or something. It's like a thinner cut of pork, and with the fresh breading, so he makes the breading. So it's all of this like thoughtfulness that he goes into making the dish. And it's a dish, ironically, that she doesn't really like. She doesn't like greasy food, but she wants to remember her husband because of that. He made this dish. And it was also kind of like, yeah, it was a thing in the story. If he just did what he wanted to do instead of making kind of this high-end kind of dangerous food, but it was because she was the chancellor of she was the daughter of a chancellor at a university and all this stuff. So there's all this like pressure that he needs to, live up to their reputation and stuff like that. And so circumstances break people up. It sucks.
One of my favorite parts about this book, and I think that it shows that no matter how far away there are some culturally human ties that we have, is just the connection between like food, memory, identity, and place. I loved that none of the foods were just foods. There were so many elements that make the food what it was, not just in memory or in emotional connection, but in like, this soil has this property, so it makes it taste a little salty. and just how that so much ties into the identity of the people that live in that area.
Yeah.
As an Appalachian, I very much appreciated.
Yeah, there's
ties.
a great sense of like location, like a potato grown in this region of Japan is going to taste different from another region, and just all the little preparatory things that. And I sometimes think it's also like the way somebody prepares something for you. It's something about, I don't know, it's about whatever. The way their, weird things like the way their hands smell. I don't know what it is, but sometimes it's just like the way somebody makes something. It's just, I don't know. It's like their essence or whatever. Just something about it that's a little like an ever like microscopic amount. That's what makes the difference and what makes it taste the way it does.
And that's one thing about the father is that it's not just food. He tries to replicate and experiences as much as possible. He tries to get plates that would be similar because he recognizes that, we probably hear it all the time, that we eat with our eyes and we eat with our nose. Therefore, to bring you back into that space to give you closure, it needs to be as close to that experience.
Yeah. I mean, he's kind of replicating as much as possible those particular experiences. It makes me think of like, there are a couple of like famous examples of like in art, these kind of like scent and taste triggers. So there's a very famous French novel, which was multi-volumes, Marcel Proust's Remembrance of Things Past. And that, I believe, I have not read that book, but my understanding is the opening of that novel, there's a character walking through the streets and he smells these cookies emanating, and it triggers him on his remembrances of things past that go. I don't think actually the novel ever got done, but multiple volumes that lead to these memories. If you'd like a more contemporary example, if you've ever seen Ratatouille and the food critic Anton Ego, he has the Ratatouille, and the second he's old Anton Ego, and then he's like a little kid, Anton Ego with his mom making him Ratatouille for dinner. That these things are, usually like as far as our memory, we think about things like sight and sound, but it's really the smells and the taste. Those are the most powerful things that we have. I think sometimes you're just having smells that remind you of childhood or remind you of, a fun time in your life or a fun trip, or just the way somebody's jacket smells, just takes you back to those kind of memories.
When I was smaller, I always thought about how much I wanted smell-o-vision. And I remember when Nickelodeon, I think it was a partnership with Burger King or someone, they gave you this little card and they called it Smell-o-Vision. Yeah. And there would be like cues on the screen for you to scratch and sniff. And I thought that was one of the coolest things ever. And it made you, maybe you don't want to smell everything you see on the TV, but the cooking channel,
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually done, and I believe movie theaters had smell-o-vision in the 50s and the 60s, where it would be the same kind of, here's a card, and at the certain points you scratch and sniff certain things.
Or pumping the smell of popcorn.
Yeah. I always remember, I remember like as a kid having like those scratch and sniff books or whatever. That's one of those smells I wish I could go back to. And I'm sure if whatever copy of whatever book, it was like fruits or something like that. Whatever copy of whatever book and whatever kind of chemical smell they made that out of, it's just it's there's no book that has that smell anymore. But I would like to go back.
For me, I think of the scented erasers. Did this smell like blueberry? No, but it smelled okay. Oddly edible. If you ever had that urge to eat an eraser.
Yeah, you ever eat an eraser before?
I haven't, luckily.
Have you like chewed on one or just sniffed it a lot?
Just sniffed it,
Okay, yeah.
If somebody tells you, hey, it smells like blueberries, you're like...
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Kind of. Is that what the smell is? It smells like
sorta.
Rubber.
It's close enough. It's close enough. Yeah, there's some sort of approximation. But this is a book about people like, I want to, as perfectly as possible, replicate. It's not some kind of copy of a copy.
And I mean, even in this book, I am not a big fish, seafood, or spaghetti person, and I have to say I would probably eat everything that they mention.
Yeah, I'd give it a try. I think there's always the scenes where the people come in for the first time. It's like, we have a set menu for anybody who's a first timer, and then they seem to give them just an obscene amount of food. I assume it's just like a tasting place. There's little samples of everything, but still, it's like a lot. All these like pickled things and sushi and meats and all this stuff. And it is kind of like you're just kind of, I feel full afterwards, but not in a bad way because I didn't actually eat anything.
So that was one of the things that I was interested in, was that first set meal. We never really get a reason as to why they do that, but I wonder if it's also part of the detective work. You can see like what they really ate of and what they didn't to kind of start forming those opinions of what am I looking for?
I guess it seems like what goes first because they seem to eat it all. And they're like, there was even one character who had like ate earlier and he's like, I shouldn't be eating so soon. And then he just gobbles it all down. So, and I think it is seem like a place and a space because the restaurant, everybody feels like it's really good food, but they're kind of like, is this too formal for me? And they're literally like, just eat, tuck in, basically. We won't judge you if you start just, like spooning it in, you're just shoveling it into your mouth or something like that. So it seems like a safe space to savor and not like, it's not this performative thing of like, this is how you're supposed to eat something. There's a no judgment zone as far as the way you eat the food.
I wonder if that's part of the reason why they don't want it getting big and blown up. If they have too many people there, you won't have the same intimate.
Yeah.
I can just let loose.
Yeah, and I do think this is very cozy. Yes, it is a very cozy set of stories, but also I feel like under it there is some commentary about thinking about into the 2000s. We have the rise of kind of websites that you can rate people's restaurants and things like, which was really really revolutionary. But also like frustrating if you're like a local restaurant where all the locals go, and then you've got just some rando that has a smartphone from passing through is like, well, this says it's the best place to eat, so I'm gonna go here, and so it does kind of it like mingles with like things are kind of getting kind of thrown out of whack. And I know a number of places that were delicious that's the best rated, and they would often have to like get bigger places and things because, this hamburger is really good or something, and so they have to like have a bigger place to have it because so many people are going to get the hamburger instead of just the local people that enjoy the hamburger or something like that. And yeah, the last story, there's a character who wants a certain kind of beef stew, and he literally like, I have connections to this celebrity chef, and the celebrity chef like did it. He covered his bases, and he got the celebrity chef and the food detectives to do it. And it's like, because I know this celebrity chef, I know he'll do a great job making it. And it is this kind of like annoyance that they have about celebrity chefs, which 2005 on, we've just been inundated with celebrity chefs, and now they're just all over the place. They're on social media, and a lot of them do really good stuff, but it's just like, it's like, you're just, I don't know, just the spectacle of like making food and being, this is like, I can do this dish and I can make it, I can update it, I can, that kind of celebrity chef. They're going to do their spin on something.
I won't lie though, 80% of what I consume on social media is food related. Food or travel, either or.
Yeah, I'd seen some. It was referring to basically the variations of porn, and had the top 25 or whatever. Like housing porn or gardening porn. Because these things are like, you can't. They can show the visuals and they can describe it, but you're missing the fundamental experience of food. Actually, there was regular porn that we would think of, just porn in general, and then was 2, and food porn was 1. Like, you actually, books about food and TV shows about food, you are not actually getting the direct experience. If you're looking at someone else experience food, or you're hearing someone describe food, so it's like a fundamental disconnect. You can watch people kiss in a movie all you want, but it's really different when you kiss, when you're actually kissing involved, or you kiss a person. So it is kind of strange. It is something that titillates and entices us, but we can't actually have it in book form or in TV form, things like that.
Yeah, my partner absolutely hates when I send him food videos because he's like, I can't eat it, and I want to eat it, and it's torturous. And I'm like, but don't you want to imagine eating it? So two very different takes on that kind of food content.
Yeah, and I think too, it's like these are like people wanting to return to this kind of return, kind of a return to innocence or something like that. Having a meal that you lost at some point, and the memories associated with it, the experience, and also that it can trigger other kind of traumas and grief and things like that in it, which makes sense. So. It's very delicate, as far as the revealing the case and like, for some of the story, like there are like twists in these stories, which I give it a lot of credit for. So.
That last one, I didn't see the twist coming, and I think that it goes to show like how much of our own pain and trauma we bring into meeting new people, because his stepmom didn't earn all of his hateful feelings. In fact, she's a beautiful, lovely, kind woman. And we find out only at the end that she always has been.
Yeah. And I mean, it is in that story, the last one about the stew, which I believe it's pronounced. Let me get the name here. The Nikuhaga, but it's some sort of like, it's got potatoes, carrots. It's just a stew, something that people have taught, a certain kind of stew, traditional Japanese stew, and that it was something his mother made, and it was also something that the mother made sure that the nurse, who was going to be his new mother, got it and made it just the way he liked it, and so.
I also like the book ends kind of on a cliffhanger. We don't know which stew the man's going to go with. He leaves without ever confirming. I mean, I think it pushes you in the direction. But I guess it depends on how intimate he wants to get on TV, which stew he's going to pick.
Yeah. And I think, too, like maybe even like him going back to the stepmother who's like been very nice to him and like keep, very, very, thinking like admittedly the epitome of a sacrificial mother. She's like, she gets this big like annual annuity from him. She makes sure she's okay, but she just hasn't spent it. And she's like, in case his business goes bad, he'll have that money to start another business or something.
Even though he's kind of a brat.
Yeah, I mean he's kind of a brat. Yeah, he's a CEO, so he's head honcho. So yeah. And there are certainly there's the regular who's part the Tay, I believe, and she's always complaining about the food. It's not it's a little too salty for me, or the noodles aren't quite right, or something like. She just seems very aggravating as a figure, and she pops up in a couple of stories, and she's just one of the regulars eating, and she just finds something to complain about, which I guess it keeps us humble. Then everybody's like, everything's awesome. You could always do better, I guess.
I was really interested, like, after I read it and I was looking up more about it, apparently he has an earlier set of stories based around food, and some of the characters we see in this book are from that original series. So now I'm like, I need to go back and read that book and see, like, what.
So he has, like, I guess a kind of, like, a universe of interconnected books about people in and around Kyoto.
Yeah, I think this is the first of 3 or 4 of a whole series about them specifically.
Yeah, he certainly, I mean, he seems like someone who is like, he knows Kyoto. He grew up in Kyoto. He came back to live in Kyoto. He knows Kyoto. I also think he's a dentist. So for whatever reason, I always think dentists work 4.5 days a week or something. So they've got some off time to go experience some things, and they got vacation. So they go and, they go have things. I think it was like, it's always interesting that like maybe bored medical professionals of some sort always end up getting into like writing of some kind. Like Arthur Conan Doyle was a doctor, and he just got bored and started writing Sherlock Holmes. Or Zane Grey was a dentist, and he ended up writing westerns, because he was just bored. He'd never been out west and just started writing them. That this is kind of, I don't know, like, our medical, like, business is a little slow. I think I'll start writing a novel, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have any other thoughts about the book, but I'm happy if you do. But I do have a final question
Yeah,
when we
let's
get
think about
there.
that final question.
So my final question was, if you knew a food detective, is there a food that you would pay them to look for and like tell us about that food? What are the memories or the?
I think I can think two. I can think of because it was literally. I have to admit, reading this book, I was like, okay, I need to check up and see what that word what that word is, or like that name means something, right? Or what the names for like a comfortable inn where drinks and food are served. So there's a lot of these kind of words. I think. Yeah, having like maybe a glossary or keeping a glossary of words as you go along is a nice thing to do in a book like this, which is very light and it moves very well. So just keep that in mind. You may be looking on the internet or looking on you're looking at your dictionary for what the Japanese word. What does this mean in Japanese? Two things I can think of, and they're very particular. First, and I can't really replicate it. It is the peanut butter and jelly or the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches that I got in grade school to high school from the 80s to the 90s. And apparently from what I've heard, it's like this government peanut butter, which is very hard. But I guess you could still scoop it. And maybe it was in a can. This is where things like the people who worked in cafeterias said, I've done this for years. And then they just put a lot of honey in it or maybe Caro syrup and they whip it up. And it's this, just put it on a white bread. And it's just amazing. It's amazing. Like school lunches were not good, okay? I don't know. Maybe they've gotten better, but they were not very tasty where I was from. But gosh darn it. They would have it with soup sometimes. Yeah, those peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And the other one, it was this little canned roast beef. So it was all like chopped up. No, it was all stringy, right? And I've been in places, like I feel like this is in a Piggly Wiggly somewhere, this kind of brand. This is my grandmother would get it. She'd just open it and warm it up and we would have it with whatever vegetables we had on it. I'm from the South. So, you have it with your okra and your black-eyed peas and your cream corn. It's all delicious. And, it just tasted it. It was substantial. It wasn't too soupy. You could make it just a white bread. Something about white bread, which I can't really stand to eat anymore because it tastes so sweet to me. And you just put all that in mayonnaise, and it was delicious. You just have it with all your vegetables. And I thought when I got back when I moved here, I thought I found it. I was like, no, that's not it. So it's always like looking for this can of roast beef that probably has long gone bankrupt. So just really sad. It was the right kind of like substantialness. What about you?
I have a few. The first one that came to mind, I don't know if you remember them. Back in the late 90s, the early 2000s, Nestle had these little chocolates called Treasures. Mm-hmm. And they had caramel in them, and they were nothing like a Carmelo bar. I cannot describe to you what these are like. And I haven't seen them since the early 2000s, and I can still imagine like their texture and their taste. The second one might be a little more strange. It's Bob Evans vegetable beef soup. Mm-hmm. I am, despite being very willing to try a lot of foods, I'm a pretty picky eater from day to day. And literally from the time I was like 7 until they quit offering it, every time I went to Bob Evans, I would get grilled cheese and vegetable beef soup. And they discontinued their vegetable beef soup. And my poor sweet husband has tried multiple times to recreate it. And he does good. His vegetable beef soup is good. But there is just something else. And my mom always says, it comes from a can, Meghan. It's not special. It comes from a can. Yeah. And I'm like, then replicate it. Then get me canned soup that tastes like that.
Or it's some sort of dry pack that they've got it and it's a little dehydrated and they put whatever in it to make it. Yeah. But yeah, I know what it's that kind of, I don't know, it's something with the soup sauce or whatever. Mm-hmm. If it's more kind of a stew, it's kind of a sauce. If it's more, but yeah, it's something about it that is just, with all the vegetable, it's just properly seasoned. And yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I try to make vegetable beef soup at my house, and it's just like, no, that's not it.
Get so close. My last one though is actually from a local restaurant that's now closed. I don't know if you ever went to the Corner, Hoagies and Hoagies and something. It was some kind of
No,
alcohol.
I should have. I feel like I missed out because I do love a good submarine sandwich.
You missed out. I love pickles, and their fried pickles. There was something about their Chipotle ranch that they had, but also their Philly cheesesteak was delicious. And they have another local restaurant, Oscar's, and I went there and got the fried pickles, and they were not anything like the ones at the corner, and I was devastated. So yeah, I would love to have those fried pickles again.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's also like even like stuff that we know and love, it'll get changed. Usually somebody's like, we got to cut corners. And then the thing that you loved is like, it's not the same, even though like it says on the menu or whatever you buy. And it's just so upsetting.
Yeah,
You know?
it is.
Yeah. There was where I grew up, there was a sandwich shop. It was called R&M Hoagies. It was in Canton, Georgia. It was basically, apparently it was a guy who fought in World War II. He was in New Jersey and he was with the war with somebody in Georgia, and they said, hey, why don't you come down to Georgia? It's a little warmer down here than it is in Jersey. And so they came down and they opened this sandwich shop, which was, and it was also like, this is the best sandwich that I ever had. And by the time I was going there like once a week when I was in high school, if I could, there was the children of him, and then they eventually sold it to somebody, and then that place went out of business, and it's just like it's lost. And it usually like we would call it a pro cut, because they didn't think people in Georgia could quite pronounce prosciutto at that point. So just call it pro cut and we'll know what you're talking about. Which I think now most people in that was like, we know what prosciutto is. But it was like an alien thing to like these kind of sandwiches from like the Northeast are like just totally alien to them. And they were like amazing. And just everything was just so perfect. It was like that and turkey and steak and all these. It was made. They had a Reuben. It was just all so delicious. But yeah, it was this kind of weird. It was this town, just a town in Georgia, and they had these amazing sandwiches. And it was very much a tradition. When you took an AP test, it was right downtown in this old school in Canton, like used to be the high school. And then you get done with your AP test, and you go to the hoagie shop to get your sandwiches. It was a multi-year. Even someone I knew who teaches there now, before they closed it, they take their AP history exam and then they go to the hoagie. Everybody goes to the hoagie shop. So, yeah, I'd like the food detectives to like just tell me what the recipes are, or hire the people to like what's it gonna take. If I ever won the lottery and won it a lot, that's what I would like to bring back into my life, is just a hoagie shop for me, nobody else. I'll keep them on retainer.
Or even Wonka bars again. They still own them, and we just had the Willy Wonka movie come out, and they did not release a classic Wonka bar. Breaks my heart.
You figure, if we're all just in this for money, and I do think that like a lot of the things we picked are things that are like, they're processed foods of some sort, and I think it is just that when you're a kid, your taste buds are jacked up, and so it's just you are picky. Everybody's picky, and then you kind of these things that really stick out to you, and then you hopefully you have a refined palate and you're open to eating other things. Some people are not always that way, but yeah, these are just things. These are memories, powerful stuff. So
For sure.
all right, well, thank you. Thank you for listening. We'll be back with another episode in another short book to read next time. Please make sure to like and subscribe and follow HerdCon.